Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's 4 o'clock, and welcome to Creating Your Healthy Truth with me, Barb. And I'm really excited to be here with you today. And, since I've gotten my certification for the gluten free, I'm all over that stuff. I'm reading and learning so much that it's just, I don't know if you got my newsletter, but in my newsletter that I sent out the beginning of the week, I talked about really how, you know, being diagnosed with a gluten sensitivity and not taking it seriously is a really big mistake. I just want to share a few stats that I've gotten recently that it just, well, as I go through it, you'll understand and I'll add into it what I need to, okay? So, in terms of antibiotics, if you had a lot of antibiotics as a child, or if you have children and you give them antibiotics on a regular basis for the slightest sign of a sniffle or a cough, not a good thing. Not only does it alter the microbiome pretty much for life when you start at such an early age, but also children with heavy use of antibiotics are pretty certain to have a gluten sensitivity or even a celiac diagnosis. So, yeah, I just kind of learned that the other day. Um, and actually, celiac sensitivity has increased over 24% in Italy, in children in Italy. Imagine that. And they're the ones that had in the past 25 years. And they're the ones that have the 00 flour that is supposed to be better than ours. So I was really surprised to learn that. So I guess you think it's better, but maybe it doesn't have the same chemicals we have here, but it's got the gluten in it. And this was really staggering to me. Now, my mother died of atherosclerosis at a very young age. She was 53 degrees. 53 degrees. Oh, God, no. She was 53 years of age when she passed, and she was diagnosed with it when she was 50. And at that time, they really offered us no hope because she was blocked like 80% all up in her chest. I mean, everywhere. And I learned that atherosclerosis, and this was in my gluten-free course, um, falls under the heading of chronic inflammatory disease, which means the way they put it under that umbrella, and this is why functional medicine is so important to see doctors that practice that because they know how to connect all the dots. And if you're having uh, circulatory issues, gluten could be at the root of it as well. That was the whole synopsis of this section in our class. And it's interesting. I was just at the cardiologist today, and I'll share a little bit of my story because it's mine and I know it, and I don't mind divulging it. Because if I can help somebody out there, then it's worth it to me. Okay. But and all my stats are good in terms of my HDL, my LDL, my cholesterol, all that's terrific. And I said, well, what are these markers here that I was tested for? He said, that's all inflammation. He said, that's your immune system. And I was like, so here I am at the cardiologist, and we're talking about my inflammation and my immune system, which I always think of immune system as food sensitivities and antibodies and all that stuff. So it just goes to show that it crosses over into just about everything. It's not just regulated to just your gut, which we kind of knew. But when he used the example of atherosclerosis today, I was like, holy cow, and then, I saw the cardiologist because, genetically, that could be an issue for me. And ever since I had COVID, my cardiovascular system has really gone through an overhaul, if you will. So I've had some things show up for me that I never had all my life. And they do say that COVID does really attack the cardiovascular system. So just a little FYI on that. But I thought that was really interesting. And so what is the source of the chronic inflammatory disease? Because they say all disease begins, right, in the gut. And so some of the sources are genetic vulnerability. So for me, my mother's atherosclerosis is a vulnerability for me. Environmental triggers, which could be caused by, what we put on the end of our forks. Food is a big driver of these triggers, okay? Altered microbiome, which is a dysbiosis. Intestinal permeability, which is the leaky gut. Now, as I mentioned last time, I was diagnosed with leaky gut. And I actually had another a test done for that, and it's still there. So, and for people that know me and that know how I eat, they're probably thinking, God, if she's got that, then what do I have? Because I really eat very clean. So, but I've noticed that there's something of late that I've been eating. I don't know whether it's a rice. So I'm going back to get all my other Zoomers redone and get some additional testing for other grains and so forth. Because, information is power, right? Education, information. So, and then, so the systemic immune response, AKA systemic inflammation. So it encompasses so many different things. Like when he talked about like the the light just went on for me. I was like, holy cow. And so if gluten was a driver for my mother, and then I had issues with that, genetics, right? So anyway, I just wanted to recap. So, and also very important, newly diagnosed celiac disease in people over the age of 60, because normally you're diagnosed at a younger age with celiac disease. So to be diagnosed with it over the age of 60 is saying something. And it says here it has increased from 4% to now between 20 and 34%. That's huge. So, so gluten really, I've always heard it said, from Dr. O'Brien, that gluten really isn't, and even Dr. Mark Hyman, that gluten really isn't something that we should be eating. It doesn't have any redeeming qualities, and it causes more problems for people than it's worth. So, so I thought that was pretty interesting. So that, and then a recap, the antibiotic use as a child. So if you're having gut issues and you go to see a doctor, if you were given antibiotics a lot as a child, you need to mention that to them, because that would absolutely if they know their stuff, that would make sense to them, and that would be important information that they would want to have. Okay, and that the chronic inflammatory disease spectrum, which all this falls under, atherosclerosis, all kinds of disorders. What are the sources? Are genetic vulnerability, environmental triggers, aka what we put on the end of our fork, our altered microbiome, dysbiosis, intestinal permeability, leaky gut, and systemic immune response. So systemic means throughout our body, systemic. So as you can see, it's not just in the gut. And you know what? You may not you may eat gluten and not get bloating. That doesn't mean you don't have a sensitivity to it. It may not show itself that way for you. It could be a little rash on your arm. It could be a headache, a cough. Some people get wheezing, okay? It's all different. So just because your gut isn't bloating doesn't mean that you get a free pass on the gluten. But anyway, so I just wanted to share that with you all today because it's mind-blowing for me, and I thought I knew a lot, right? I'm still learning. So hope that helps somebody. If you have any questions around that, please don't hesitate to shoot me a message, an email, barb@yourhealthytruth.com. I'm going to be doing a webinar in September, probably mid-September. Look for the email on healing the gut. You know, like what to do about it and what do you need to make it happen. You know, what kind of herbs, what kind of foods, you know, all of that. So that's going to be the middle of September. And if you don't get my newsletter, go on my website, www.yourhealthytruth.com, and opt in for my free gift, and that will put you right on my mailing list. Okay? So everybody have an awesome day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.